Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're very excited to have another speaker series. As you guys know, for the speaker series, we invite global speakers that have great experience in different industries and different backgrounds for them to share insightful information for you guys to learn. So today we have the honor to have Erik Premont here. He's going to be our speaker for today. And so, to tell you a little bit about his background, Erik has experience in over 25 years of coaching, training, marketing, and sales, and franchising development. So, Erik is going to tell us a little bit more about his experience, some great insights that he has, and of course, tell you guys a little bit more of recommendations and things to learn about franchising. So, he has experience in Latin America, the Caribbean, the USA, and Canada. Erik himself is from Canada, and he speaks around how many languages, Erik? I think more than five. So
Seven,
he
seven.
languages, and so he's happy to give his speech today. So Erik, we look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. And as you guys know, there's always a chat box here to the right where you guys can ask any questions you have for Erik, any ideas, suggestions, anything that comes to mind. And he's gonna be more than happy to answer those questions towards the end. So please feel free to reach out to us and here in the chat box, ask anything you guys want to make this a more engaging speaker series. So that being said, Erik, thank you very much for being here today and welcome to our speaker series. The stage is all yours. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Maria. Muchas gracias, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, tout le monde. Bienvenue, mesdames et messieurs, à ce webinaire. Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Willkommen, herzlich willkommen zu diesem Webinar. Здравствуйте, добро пожаловать в этом webinar, господа. Bom dia, gente. Espero tudo bem. Sejam bem-vindos nesse seminar. Konnichiwa, ni hao, et bonjour tout le monde. So my name is Erik Premont. I am originally French-Canadian and came from a teacher, educator background, football coach background, and came to the United States a couple of decades ago to teach French to the Cajuns and fell in love with international franchising. And I've been in international franchising for over a decade now and really enjoying every single aspect of it. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you, Maria, for inviting me to be here. I really wanted to just take this time to let everybody know this is a very interactive seminar, webinar. Certainly welcome everybody's feedback, everybody's idea, everybody's experience that they want to share. I think we can just go ahead and start with slide number one that calls International Franchising a Fascinating Universe. Maria, si puedes dar la vuelta, por favor, a la slide. So what I really love about this world we're living in, which is a very, very global world, it's a fascinating universe. And basically, technology, all the social media platforms that we have these days, literally it's mind-boggling, where you can literally be in communication real time with anybody, anywhere, with as many people as you want. Thus, the proof is we're all in today. People are calling in from different countries in Latin America, Canada, and the United States, and it is a beautiful thing. And that means that basically for the international business scheme, it is very, very tempting and very appealing for a lot of companies to want to take their brand to other countries, south of the border, overseas, or for international franchise concepts, international companies to bring their great companies into North America, Canada, or the United States. It's absolutely a great desire that everybody has to make that connection and certainly expand their business. But most of all, I've been made aware over the years that some brands have tried and failed, and some brands have had to attempt a second time, like Pizza Hut in Brazil, for example. And some brands have made it extremely successful. And the reason for that is literally typically understanding the dynamics of tropicalization and soul printing. Maria, la próxima slide, por favor. Now, these two words, as you can see, if you type them on your own keyboard, you will see that they don't even pass Microsoft Word spell check. So let's take a closer look at it. Now, tropicalization is basically the fine concept, if you will, of adapting your franchise system to a specific market while protecting the authenticity of the brand. As you know, a company that works well, that works well in replicating themselves and thou shalt produce and fructify and multiply, they do so because they have systems. So I don't know how many American football fans we have here, just to give you an idea of what the system is. I'm personally living in Dallas, Texas. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. That's interesting because a lot of people hate the Steelers. A lot of people love the Steelers. No one is lukewarm about them. And, they have a system in place. So you have to keep that system when you're traveling overseas. And why do I make an allusion to a sports team? Well, it's very simple, because in franchising, just like in sports, systems allow teams to win or to not win, right? So your talent comes and goes. Your leadership figures can be replaced as well. However, your system really, really stays in place. And you want to make sure that that system is robust enough to be crossing the border and going to other places. So really staying specific to the authenticity of the brand and following your systems, but making some tweaks and some adaptation is what tropicalization means, basically. Some of them can be pretty substantial to the system, but as long as they respect the legacy of the brand and they stay faithful to the authenticity of the company's culture, they will win. Now, these types of adaptation basically can range from legal issues to modus operandi, to real estate, lease negotiation, construction, operations, training, employee relations, all of the above, while delivering the exact same guest experience to the end users. So what typically you do, when the first step you really want to do when you're bringing a concept, or you're attempting to bring a concept overseas, south of the border, or to bring a concept to America, North America, how much is our threshold of tolerance for tropicalization without losing the brand authenticity and deliverables? And that is really, really, really important. For example, we can go through a lot of different examples in tropicalization, starting with legal issues. So that's slide number 3, Maria, por favor. Legal issues. These can be anything from number 1A, protecting your intellectual property, securing proper trademark registrations in your domain. Some details include checking to see how your company name is going to translate into the vernacular of your new host country. I'm going to give you a very good example here. Church's Chicken. Everybody's familiar with Church's Chicken. So when they went to the Middle East, they knew they could not go into the Middle East with a name like Church. So they made a different penetration approach strategy, and they entered the Middle East with the name Texas Chicken. So you need to be able to make those tweaks. Kentucky Fried Chicken is another example. In Quebec, where I'm from, the language police is there to protect the preservation of the French language in a continent, North America, that is predominantly Anglophone, Anglo-speaking. Therefore, in Quebec, Kentucky Fried Chicken is poulet frit à la Kentucky. And even the entire outdoor signage, the stationery, everything that goes with what everybody knows as KFC in Quebec is PFK, including the outdoor signage of all the franchise units. So these are not minimal, but they are necessary. Otherwise, you simply are not allowed to be in Quebec. Cold Stone Creamery in Quebec is La Crèmerie Cold Stone. So as long as the descriptive is in the French language, it works. But you also want to know, well, our tagline, for example, how well does that translate? I have people from Mexico on this call, and I have people from Spain, maybe. I do know that I have people from Colombia. So let me give you an example. If I'm telling you in Colombia, le provoca un tinto, that basically means, do you want a cup of coffee? Well, if you're flying from Madrid, España, un tinto is a glass of red wine. So I promise you at 9 o'clock in the morning, unless you have some serious issues, or unless you've been partying for 24 hours, you certainly don't want a glass of red wine at 9 in the morning. Some of those expressions are a little more than just a tinto. But as we all know, that there are some matices, some nuances. You want to make sure that it really translates well to the vernacular of the country. Do you have any money in Mexico? Is it, oye, güey, tiene lana? Well, the same question in Guatemala would be, ¿tenés vos? And in Nicaragua would be, ¿vos andas reales? So anyways, you get the point. You want to make sure that when you really translate all of your slogans, your taglines, all of your marketing material, your offer, your brand presentation, do not offend, or make sure that you're translating everything that is the essence of your brand without offending or without creating a confusion or a problem with the language police. Your intellectual property is also very important. I mean, it's very, very important. Now I'm going to bring the paradigm to the other phase. Somebody who wants to bring a franchise system, for example, into the United States. Well, we have registration states in the U.S., and we have non-registration states. We have areas, for example, California, that is called an escrow state. So that means that not only your franchise disclosure document needs to be approved at the federal level, it also needs to be approved by the Board of Examiners of the state of California. And when you sell a franchise in California, you know that it is an escrow state. That means you cannot collect the legal fee, the franchise fees. So you need to make sure you have the deep pockets enough to realize that, hey, if you're selling a concept that's going to take you 6 to 9 months from the time that the franchise is sold until the time that the business is up and running, you need to wait 6 to 9 months before you can collect the fees. The other way around, I remember when we brought Salad Creations to Brazil. You have in Brazil what they call the INTI, Instituto Nacional de Propriedade Industrial, which means that basically they're the ones that will decide when the master franchisee is allowed to transfer the funds into the United States. So those are obviously some dynamics you really need to be well aware of. And obviously, franchisors my age, for example, when you really want to translate all of that vernacular to other countries, probably would not hurt to ask your teenage sons or daughters, because they know more, they know much more. We could go next to the modus operandi. That's slide number 4, Maria. I talked a little bit about it in the previous slide, but basically one of the frequency of royalties made to the franchisors. This is extremely important. A lot of North American companies are so used to basically closing their books weekly, paying their royalties weekly, payroll being done bi-weekly very often in this country and in Canada. Well, in a lot of countries, Europe and Latin America, they really close their books monthly. Well, this is not a small adjustment. I mean, from a franchisor to be really prepared to basically adapt their accounts receivable module and certainly have their budget expectations in line with the fact that there's going to be monthly transactions rather than weekly or bi-weekly. Tax treatment on transactions is another big one. Brazil, usually, I think it's 15% in tax withholdings, 10% in Mexico. The NPE in Brazil, IMPI in Mexico, Instituto Mexicano de Propiedad Industrial. I think in Colombia you deal with the DIAN, and even tax withholdings can be higher if it's not the right language that is in your legal document. So you really need to be cognizant of that. Franchisors really need to be aware of the fact that there's going to be some costs incurred in just the money transactions that these people are going to make to franchisors. So we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware that there's going to be some significant translating costs, translating of legal paperwork that is going to be filed within their respective federal offices before even money can be transferred. Well, who's going to pick up the cost for all of these translations? And you need to really know that ahead of time before, so you negotiate all of these points ahead of time. And there are no bad surprises at the very, very early stages of this relationship that you're nurturing with your new friends. Documentation, filings are required every single time a franchise payment is being made. You need to be prepared for that. Now, failure, and I'll be very, very, very straight, honest with that, Failure to anticipate these business practice adjustments is going to hurt the relationship at a very, very, very early stage of this relationship. And folks, I cannot stress enough the word relationship. That's what I love about what I do. I believe we are in the relationship business, and there's nothing more important in a relationship. It's like a garden. It's like a marriage relationship. Literally, it's a business marriage relationship. You roll up your sleeves, and you certainly know that by the time that everybody went to the altar and said, I do, to do business with you, you're prepared, you've had the hard conversations, you've set up expectations on both sides, because you know that once you hit the ball running, you start developing, building restaurants or units. It's for better and for worse, and we're in this together. We trust each other. We trusted each other enough to say, yes, let's do this. So it's very, very, very important that you set up the expectations in order not to have complications. And then the minute there's something that was not the way it was, as it was presented at the stages where you were still courting, you lose credibility, and that's very, very hard to recover. So again, you really want to set that up, because this is very important. Either the franchisor will be in a position where basically their cost of collecting fees end up being higher than the royalties likely to be generated during the first year, especially in areas where the currency, the local currency, is weak against their US dollar or crown or whatever currency that they're coming from. Or the other way around, the franchisee will be smothered with fees that will literally make it cost prohibitive for them to continue to grow. And both cases are disastrous. We are in the relationship business, and as a franchisor, I can tell you that the best asset that a franchisor has in developing their territory and their brand, whether it's domestic or international, is a happy franchisee who's making money and who can't wait to open their second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th unit. The worst liability a franchisor has is an unhappy franchisee who wishes they've never bought your brand. So again, set up the expectations right. Next slide, please, Maria, por favor. Real estate is a big one when you're in, again, international development. Like, my wife and I were shocked when we saw the different looks of shapes and of the various TGI Fridays locations in Moscow when we adopted Tatiana, our little girl from Russia. I was flabbergasted to see 2, 3, 4-story high TGI Fridays in Moscow, and I realized, well, hey, land acquisition, the process is very country by country. So do commercial real estate prices and practices. I mean, especially in populated areas, density of population being a factor in Latin America, and Europe, and Asia for sure, and age of the continent or the city where you're in, where you have third, fourth, fifth generation locations that are in the prime area. Now, one dynamic that will never change, whether it's domestic or international, location, location, location. If you know that this is the best place where you want your building to be, you got to make it work. Hooters opened their first store in Prague in the Czech Republic, and a 2-story building in downtown Prague, in a 900-year-old building. I've seen Hooters open a unit in Crescent Avenue in Montreal on a 4-story building. So that will translate also in operations practices, which is going to be our next conversation. But we'll just take a little bit to real estate. I just want to, make sure that you guys really get the point that you need to show some flexibility, understanding that your modus operandi will be different, your operations will be different, and laws and regulations will be different. So when you're looking at now you can go to operations, Maria, if you want. You're looking at a 3-story high, for example, delivering chicken wings to patrons, and they go down 3 stories before they get to the table. Well, your chicken wings may be a little cold if it's 10 below zero and you come from the 3rd floor by the time you get downstairs. Or if you have the mentality of somebody doing business in the United States, for example, well, somebody carrying a dish 3 stories down to a customer will probably rise a worry about what about workers' compensation, what about these people complaining to OSHA that, whatever that is. Again, you need to be ready to prepare to address all of these issues, understanding typically that workers' compensation laws and regulations are different and employee relation laws are very different in other countries. So another thing about operations that is extremely important for franchisors to really, really be prepared for when they go outside of their country is product substitution. Sometimes it's a very easy, a no-brainer. In Mexico, for example, we have 14 restaurants. Boston Pizza Restaurants has 14 restaurants in Mexico, all the way from Mérida, Yucatán, to Monterrey, Nuevo León. They are in Mexico City. So you can imagine that within even Mexico, there's so many different magnificent cultures, and all the way from 31 states, including El Distrito Federal. But there's the Mayan heritage, there's Olmecas, Toltecas, there's Aztecs, and everything in northern states of Mexico, your fresher tortillas will be flour tortillas, whereas you go south in the country, it's going to be corn tortillas. So when your fish tacos, for example, that is part of our menu, well, you need to make some adaptations. Jalapenos in Yucatan, yeah, they're good, but they're not as hot as the habaneros that people are used to have. So again, that little bit of tropicalization is extremely important to allow each and every one of your local franchise locations in specific different countries reflect the authenticity of the brand, but also really give the locals a taste of, hey, you really are in Mérida, you really are in Monterrey, but you're still in the Bostons. You never lose that balance. It is a very, very, very thin balance between tropicalization and maintaining the authenticity of the brand. Sometimes it's beyond peppers, right? Sometimes it's beyond tortillas. I remember when we opened Salad Creations for the first time in Higienópolis in Sao Paulo, a couple of weeks before, while they were still in construction, I realized that, there's no cheddar and there's no Swiss cheese here. Well, what do we do, Victor? What do we do, my friends here? So I asked the master franchisees, let's just look at the competition. What is really popular here that looks to have a pretty easy shelf life and storage life? Oh, well, Queijo Minas is a good one. Mussarela de Búfala is another very good cheese. Oh, great. All right. So let's look at the local providers. Introduce me to your local providers. Make sure 2 things. Number 1, the same quality is delivered 52 weeks a year. You never want to create confusion in the palate of your guest that your cheese didn't taste the same. Also, for your own sake, my dear franchisee, I want to make sure that you have the same price. I mean, we're dealing with Cisco here in Canada, United States, and Mexico for Boston's, and we're very lucky to have been able to negotiate a distribution price based on volume. So we have consistency, quality, and price consistency 52 weeks a year. So when you're allowing your local franchisees to source a product locally, you got to do a couple of different things. Number 1, you want to make sure that their product has got the same consistency in product and quality and in price 52 weeks a year, and that you do not increase additional operations costs to raise your labor cost, or that it's not cost prohibitive to raise your food cost. If you're in the restaurant business, you understand those 2 dynamics. And you want to make sure that you can certainly write a procedure for shelving, for storage. If you're in a foreign country like in Brazil, you certainly have to translate all those procedures into English and make sure the franchisor signs off on them. And you ensure consistency and you stay faithful. Every single unit you will open in this country will have the exact same product, and people who receive that inventory every week or twice a week will store it properly, will day dot it properly, and will do the right procedures that will not damage the deliverables of the brand, because the last thing you want is to create confusion. Somebody that puts on Facebook, on Twitter, or Instagram, I had lunch at Boston Pizza in Monterrey, and it really doesn't taste the same as in Seattle, then you send the wrong message. And with the speed in which social media travels these days, it's very hard to correct. So basically, that's what I would really think that it is is of critical importance, in the tropicalization. It's a very, very, very delicate matter, and if it's done right, it's going to go extremely well. And again, the balance. Every single time you're looking at tropicalizing from your modus operandi to your operations, business practice recommendations. Here's another one for you. When I was with CRO, they opened Mexican restaurants, El Chico, Cantina Laredo, in many Middle Eastern countries. So it started very well. We sent the employer, the franchisor, sent a couple of a training team comprised of 2 men and 2 women into Dubai, and that went well. But when they signed a contract for Saudi Arabia, they could no longer send women to train. So they needed to make adaptations, and before they even had the team ready to send for the first opening of the first unit in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, they needed to have a male who had replaced a female who had been trained enough to go open a restaurant overseas. So again, those are just adjustments that need to be made, and people who do it right will be very successful in the tropicalization scheme. Now, if you look at the next slide, Maria, por favor, number 8. Sole printing. This is another word that you can't find on Microsoft Word spell check. It's going to give you an error message. But I absolutely love this word and what it means, and the concept of sole print invitations, sole print rejections, sole print acceptance. Now, if you look at our entire life, basically, it's from living a family to going to school, finding a job, finding a career, raising your own family. It's all based on nurturing relationships, building and nurturing relationships. And that's soul printing. You leave a soul print on people's souls, and you let people leave a print on their soul. Well, the same thing goes in business. The same logic applies to international franchising. Successful domestic franchise sales, we've done many of these over the years. It's very, very simple compared to international. For basically, you meet the people, exchange information, have a very, very good phone conversations, series of phone conversations. Basically, they'll fly to your corporate office here in Dallas for what we call a discovery day, where they basically come to validate everything that they have read about you, everything you have told them about the company, and they come also to give you a chance to evaluate them as a franchise team for their local market. They've done all their due diligence on the company, and they have justified the cost of coming here, flying to Dallas, here to your corporate office for a discovery day. The franchisor has done the exact same amount of due diligence on the franchisee. They've collected all the information. They've run a background check on the people. They know they're for real. They know they have a financial wherewithal to invest in your business, and they know that they have a partner that has experience in the industry that you want to invest in. So, sure, let's meet face to face. They come and they have a series of meetings, fly back home with a business plan, and then they go to their bank. They get the business plan approved by their bank, sign franchise agreement, send them overnight with a franchise fee paid by check. Welcome to the family. This is great. I love this, don't get me wrong. But when you're doing this internationally, you got to add a little bit of soul printing to this. If you really want to have a very successful long-distance business relationship, mutually profitable with a very sophisticated group who has the financial wherewithal, the experience, and the credibility and the reputation in their own country to represent your brand very well, you're going to need to get on a plane and go meet them, and go meet them in person, and go meet their families. And please do not talk business too early. You will basically send a soul print rejection message. They're not important enough to you as people. You just want to just make sure if you can do business or not. And no matter how good your business deal is, no matter how good it looks on paper, no matter how promising the return on investment looks, if you literally make a soul print rejection statement to your foreign friends, you won't be friends in business. So a lot of people literally have learned the hard way. I remember traveling with someone in Paris, and we got off of a taxi, and he says, "Gracias." And I remember telling him, Just say thank you or merci. You're not in any Spanish-speaking country here. You're in France. And I don't think that he learned his lesson because he did it a second time. So that's a perfect example of a soul print rejection. You simply just don't want to make that statement. And very often, English-speaking countries, Americans especially, will just travel and expect things, people to speak English, and just learn a couple of words in the other language is going to help a lot. And certainly in the soul print invitation, the soul print acceptance. And basically, by the time that literally people are ready to, again, get on the altar, I say, hey, I really like you. I like your concept. I know you're for real. Your people are for real. You remember my children's names. And they were important to you. I would like for you now to see my business. Now you came to see my family. Thank you very much. I hope you had a good time. Yes, I loved it. Now, it gets more interesting than that, too, because some countries, for example, China, they want to do campaign with you. And they certainly want to see that you will literally sing from the same hymnal after you've had a couple of shots of whatever alcohol that they give you. And, sometimes people have to know, well, I don't drink. Well, I'm sorry. I know it's a decision you've made or for whatever reason, but sometimes I know that I've allowed international franchisors to certainly see the real Erik, and certainly was singing from the same hymnal, although I was learning a little bit. But again, you just go with the flow. Just want to make sure you don't insult people, that you tell them, look, I'm good on drinks right now. But it really is a reassuring factor for a lot of people. When they know they're going to invest millions of dollars in your business, they want to see you a little tipsy. Want to make sure that you still really sing the same, you still are the same person, you still believe from the bottom of your heart and your brand, and that your brand is going to make them successful in that country. Again, it's really, really, really important. It's very simple. Just accept the soul print invitation. Really, really, really enjoy having it. I mean, we've got to be able to do that in the international world. I mean, literally, if you learn to embrace each other's cultural differences, I mean, sky's the limit. Absolutely. So I think you want to just turn to the last slide, and I will basically, at this point, be very, very, very looking forward to hearing any questions that you have. So merci beaucoup. Muchísimas gracias. Muito obrigado. Danke schön. Muito grazie. Большое спасибо. Domo arigato gozaimasu.
Perfect. Erik, thank you very much for your speech today. I think the audience really gains a lot of different insights based on your experience across different cultures, across different countries, and of course different brands. And so it's very interesting to see how you have been immersed in this experience of franchising. You've gained all sorts of experiences, and this really becomes a lot of key learnings that we take away with us, right, from this conversation. And so let me tell you that we have many questions for you coming up your way. So I hope you're ready. So
absolutely, I certainly am.
Great, thank you. So the first one says, what's the most important element to focus on in order to maintain the same customer experience and company culture across the different franchises?
What is the most important thing to ensure the same experience? Culture.
Most important to focus on to ensure the same customer experience, the company culture across all of the franchises.
I love the question. So really it comes with the culture. A company really that is ready to expand has their own culture. That means they have their own vision statement engraved in the hearts of every one of their team members, from the executive level to the people that are washing dishes in the back of the kitchen of their franchise restaurant, and also has a mission and a message for their guests. And whatever that message is, you want to make sure that it is delivered with the same level of quality and attention. For example, I remember Salad Creations had part of their culture was they love the tipping culture, and then they love to really have send across the message that their team members are having a good time where they're making salads for their people. And they had a tip jar next to the cashier. And every single time somebody would drop a dime, a dollar, whatever, the cashier would yell, "Can I get a thank you?" And everybody said, "Thank you." And it was very sweet, funny, wonderful. So we open in Brazil, and then we leave that tip jar there. And then, of course, we had someone basically stage it to leave a real in that tip jar, and then the cashier says, "Posso ouvir obrigado?" And everybody says, "Obrigado." Then we realize, people really are not accustomed to tip in a fast casual concept in Brazil, and we're literally making them feel uncomfortable that they have to leave tip. So we literally changed that practice and instead made sure that the employees were just singing, whistling, having some different ways of showing they're having fun, and they were loving serving the salads without demanding that the guests would leave a tip. So again, you really want to create a culture that has flexibility in adapting your deliverable to a country based on what the market, the perception is from your local market.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that question. And then the second question comes saying, how important is for the franchise to have a structured supply chain system? For example, the suppliers, logistics, and data management.
Extremely, extremely important. And logistics and data management are two very different ones, right? So I would address the first one. So I want to say 2006, I realized back then Boston's only had one restaurant in Mexico, and it was in Mérida, Yucatan. And I brought back then an old colleague of mine who was VP of product sourcing and procurement with me on a trip to Mexico. And I introduced him to through the franchise world. Everybody knows everybody, right? So I introduced him to the directors of two different logistics companies that were specialized in A, freight forwarding, B, distribution. And realized that, well, in Mexico, your protein can only go through the Laredo customs, and your seafood can only go through Tijuana or sea. And okay, well, great. There's two different freight forwarding offices in two very different states of the country, so we need to nurture relationships with these people. It is critically important to have supply chain established properly, because when you're growing a company in another country, you want to make sure that you already have a vision on the number of units that you're going to establish. When we opened Salad Creations in Brazil, we had dinner with the suppliers of lettuce. We wanted to make sure that we were going to have a consistent product and realize that, wow. In the U.S., people are very, very, very excited about romaine lettuce, while in Brazil, they were much more excited about the iceberg lettuce, which they call Americana. So we want to make sure that, again, you establish those relationships with all of your fornecedores, so they call them in Brazil, your suppliers. Make sure that there is a statement of vision that is made so you can negotiate on volume even before you have a key number of stores and units that are open. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for them to really say, well, how am I going to charge you to only deliver to one store? Well, you have one store in year one. I promise you'll have 3 stores in year 2. So you need to really have the salesmanship on your team to be able to nurture those relationships with the key players and freight forwarding and in distribution services in your company. Now, data management is also extraordinarily important. And sometimes your POS provider is going to be really, really, really hard pressed to deliver in a very different foreign country. For example, when again Salad Creations, when they opened in Brazil, Net Solus was the POS system provider in the U.S. They could not simply establish anything in Brazil. They did not understand even the difference between a coupon fiscal. All the different transactions that are made. There is a different copy that stays at the Receita Federal, which is the equivalent of the IRS in the United States. So you need to be able to have a system that is going to be robust enough to interface with what your POS is if you do not have the ability to build, to bring your own proprietary POS, point of sale system, for data management in the foreign country.
Thank you very much, Erik, for that. And so I'm going through the questions because there are a couple more. So to keep them going, the other one is saying, what is your opinion about labeling the core products with the franchise brands? So basically about labeling and branding, I believe it's more asking this question. So what is your opinion on
labeling?
Yeah.
That's extremely important. That's a very good question. I remember having to change the labels on red wine vinaigrette, for example, with salad creations that came from Conway products, because wine was included in the description of the product, of the label, and you were sending it to a country where alcohol was prohibited, even wine. Even if it's red wine vinaigrette, that we know there's no alcohol content, the word still has it, and it was rejected. So you need to be very, very cognizant of that, very careful, do your due diligence, and make sure that everything you label with a brand is going to be received from the country and is not going to damage or compromise the authenticity of your brand. It's against that balance I was talking about between tropicalization and the authenticity of your brand.
Great. I believe it comes with the fact that you were saying earlier on how it's a matter of adaptability, right? So depending on the country that you're going to, you really have to adjust to what the culture is, what's the way of thinking, the traditions and everything, so that the labeling makes sense to people and you are not contradicting any other values. And so it makes it easier for your product to be sold out, right? So I believe labeling is key as well when trying to create this brightness. Yeah, great. And
I
so
agree.
yeah, the next one here is more talking about the relationship management, because you were saying, right, it's key to have your clients or your partners very, very happy. And so they're asking, like, what are some key aspects to maintain this relationship so vivid, so strong, in order to make a successful partnership with them?
I love the question. Absolutely love the question. So basically, the essence is transparency and coming across as being number one, a person to a person, wanting to know a person, wanting to know their family, seriously, sincerely interested in them as people. Very, very often, with the level of sophistication of people we're dealing with, they'll invite you to their house. You need to take that invitation. You need to go. You really need to break bread with them. And if they have family members who want you to meet, you better remember their names. And they better mean something to you. As a dad myself, the best soul print connection you can make on my heart is how you treat my children, and how you remember their names. And if you don't even pay attention to them, you didn't really penetrate my heart. And people are like that. People are like that in every country in the world. It is amazing how similar we are as humans. We love to know that we're important to other people. We love to know that we are, that our people that are important to us are also important to the people who are contemplating spending a lot of time with us in business lives. So I think that establish that credibility, establish that rapport, establish that personal relationship, and waiting to be invited to talk business before you bring it up is of utmost importance.
Great, thank you. I believe relationship management in that sense, when you talk about family-wise, it's really getting to know your client, right? It's really getting personal enough to the point where they have confidence with you and you establish a relationship, right? And so you basically communicate the values that you have on both ends, and I believe that makes the relationship goes more smooth, right? So
absolutely, because bear in mind that in most of international countries, it's not just their money, it's their reputation within their communities. There's a lot of countries where wealth is not evenly distributed, unfortunately, and you'll see where there's very little percentage of the population that has the reputation of the successful entrepreneurs in each country. That means that if they make a poor investment, the rest of the country will know it for generations to follow. So that's why really that relationship at a personal level needs to be solid before you even bring in business topics.
Definitely. And there's another question here asking about closing deals. What is some, like, either a best practice or what's something that people need to prepare for when coming into these meetings and closing a very important deal that they should have as a best practice, given your experience across the globe, basically?
Opposing views are necessary in every relationship. My mom and dad have been married for 56 years. They adore each other. My dad is a retired football coach, and my mom hates football with a passion. So they've made it work for 56 years. I just made a fun comparison here, but I see the question. But there's a lot of depth in that question, and you know, when there are opposing views that are literally counterintuitive to making a deal happen, you need to be willing to walk away. Look, this is not going to work. I honestly believe that where you are and where you see yourself, I'll give you a very good example. Bringing in, you know, Boston Pizza, for example, in a country where somebody offered to buy the entire brand at face value, but as a master franchisee, but they wanted to source everything domestically. That was a major opposing view. This is non-negotiable. Our pizza dough comes from Saskatchewan, Canada. It's the only place in the world where literally dough is a product of one province where the freezing gets so intense in winter months, and the major distributor of wheat in the entire country comes from that province. They burn their harvests at the end of the fall season, right before the snow starts falling, and the dead ashes combined with the snow serves as a cushion to protect against the frost. But the aftermath, the after effect of that is the following season when the snow melts, that wheat grows on pre-burnt soil, and it gives it that ashes aftertaste that almost makes that pizza dough taste more like naan or unleavened bread than a regular pizza dough. So if you're telling me you're going to bring my brand and pay me whatever money, but you want to grow your pizza dough locally, the answer is no. It's a no-starter. Love you to death. It's been great meeting you, but we're not going to do business together with Boston Pizza because this is not negotiable. You need to be able to draw the line as to what is compromising your brand again. That is definitely an excess of tropicalization that is absolutely counterproductive because it will damage the authenticity of the brand. What makes Boston Pizza so successful, having 440 restaurants in Canada, United States, and Mexico, is the dough is awesome, and it only is tasted at Boston Pizza. No one has a recipe for that dough. So again, you need to be willing to make a hard decision, say, sorry, it's not going to work. Now, opposing views on other topics, you have to, we have to embrace each other's cultural differences. We have to be able to know that, hey, we don't need to be importing, you know, our mozzarella cheese. You guys have wonderful dairy farms in northern Mexico, mostly Mennonite farms in the states of Chihuahua. Why don't I sponsor your local economy? Sure, I'm going to take that call. I'll talk to my product suppliers, and I'll make sure that my corporate chef gets on a plane, goes to Chihuahua, tastes your local cheese, and make sure that they meet the specs. And again, 52 weeks a year, same quality, same consistency, same price, we will accept that. So opposing views are a necessary argument that sometimes leads to a no deal.
Yeah, I think it's clear to manage expectations on that end, right? That you're entering a negotiation, and that sometimes, as you're saying, you just have to walk away if it doesn't seem like it can be scalable, right? Or if it does not apply. So it's a matter of having that mentality when entering this types of negotiations.
Correct.
Yeah. And so to wrap up the last question, Erik, as we're coming to the end, it says, when selecting a supplier, what do you consider are the main issues that we should look for beyond prices?
Yes. Prices are only one of the equation. Consistency in product is just as important. Sorry? This is more a value-driven decision than a price-driven decision. And if it's too cost prohibitive, you need to reevaluate, because you cannot compromise the value of the product you're going to be distributing to your restaurants or to your units.
Okay, so it's more focused around value then. That's
value over price, absolutely.
Perfect. So that being said, I think, Erik, we're wrapping up the questions of, as you can see, there were many regarding all of your experience. You have great insights. Really, it's great to have you here. We appreciate your time as well. It's definitely been an experience
Thank
to learn
you.
a little bit more about franchising, because it might seem scary for many people, and especially here we have some people from the audience that are from different countries around the world, and sometimes they would like to go abroad and get into that world of franchising. And so it's very interesting to see, based on your experience, that you've been around for more than 25 years, how you've engaged with different cultures, learn about adaptability, quality control, branding. All of this is, it's super helpful, and again, very insightful for all of us. So we really appreciate your time, and we thank you again on behalf of the Global Innovation Management Institute, for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Y'all have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, Erik. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.